Здравствуйте, уважаемые гости, участники, слушатели. От имени Российской национальной библиотеки
Hello, dear guests, participants, listeners. On behalf of the Russian National Library, I'm pleased to welcome you to the seminar, Libraries and Indigenous Peoples. So my name is Ksenia Morozova, and I will be the moderator of today's meeting. So first of all, a few organizational moments. We are working today in a live broadcast with simultaneous translation on YouTube. In our online conference chat, you can find a link to the online broadcast of this seminar in Russian and English. We would be glad if you could share this information with colleagues who are interested in this topic. In order to show the presentation during your presentation, you need to use this, the screen demo button. You should click on the green arrow on the Zoom toolbar and select the window you wish to share. Please let us know if you have any problems with the sound, image, or the translation. So we have some changes in our program and we are ready to begin. So we're going to listen to a welcoming word from our director of the Russian National Library, Vladimir Gennadievich Gronsky.
Уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья, я рад приветствовать участников семинара «Библиотеки и коренные народы», который организован Российской национальной библиотекой. Сохранение историко-культурного наследия коренных народов является сегодня актуальной задачей, особенно в условиях социокультурных изменений, обусловленных трансформацией ценностных ориентиров общества, глобализации информационной сферы. Библиотеки, как институты исторической памяти, вносят свой вклад в распространение информации о жизни коренных народов. Уверен, что участники сегодняшнего семинара, а это специалисты библиотечной сферы Бразилии, Вьетнама, Индии, Колумбии, Новой Зеландии, России, Шри-Ланки и ЮАР, поделятся опытом реализации проектов, направленных на сохранение историко-культурного наследия коренных народов, а также представят свой взгляд на роль библиотек в сохранении исторической памяти и цивилизационной самобытности этих народов. Хотел бы также пригласить вас к участию во второй международной конференции «Библиотечное дело на 3 континентах», которая состоится в ноябре этого года. Желаю вам здоровья, продуктивной работы, новых идей и благополучия.
Большое спасибо за напутственные слова в адрес нашего
Thank you
семинара.
very much for your kind words of welcome to our seminar. I would like to know that this year the Russian National Library of Russia is launching a series of online international seminars and conferences. So, seminar Libraries and Indigenous Peoples, seminar excursion activities of libraries, seminar Personality in the Library, and conference Librarianship on 3 continents. We invite you and your colleagues to take part in these events. So we are glad to start, and the first message, the first report is going to Okay, so it's going to Shoshana Zhabko, head of the Department of the National Literatures, the National Library of Russia. So the topic is the role of National Library in Russia in popularization and preservation cultural heritage of small ethnic groups of indigenous people of Russian Federation. So, indigenous people of Russia in our country are people who settled in the territories of traditional settlement of their ancestors. They're keeping their traditional way of life, and there are less than 50,000 people. According to the list approved by Russian Federation dated 18 December 2021, in our country there are 47 ethnic groups. As a rule, they live at the territories of North, Siberia, Caucasus, and Far East, and more than 30 subjects of Russia. So nowadays, our government supports all ethnic groups and conducts work and support their traditions and their languages and specifics. So nowadays the problem is that native speakers cannot speak their native language. And books which are published in the language of the indigenous people are published just for the sake of memory. Yeah, so readers cannot read them because they just don't know the language. So there is a quite logical question: do we need to publish books that people just cannot read? So of course we understand that it's necessary to publish these books, but not in a big circulation. So because just a small amount of people can read these books. So the process of assimilation of language is quite deep. So young parents cannot speak native languages, and they are just not ready to teach their children. Nowadays, all student books, programs, courses is designed for learning languages from the very beginning. So you can see the Soviet book from Soviet times on the slide. So, but it's for people, for children who already knew the language. So this is alphabet book.
Книги издавались для изучающих язык, но
speaker says that in Soviet times these books were published for children who already knew the language, as I said. So unfortunately, the situation is getting better, and 2022 and all the following years, UN declared that as a decade of indigenous people. And so according to this, the library is doing now a great job about publishing, popularization, and promoting cultural heritage and languages. So National Library of Russia, it's a state institute of culture with the great and richest funds and collections of books in all languages of the world. Of course, we keep literature in languages of the indigenous people of Japan, China, and other countries. So the whole history of Russia publishing is being kept here, including books. So due to required copy, which is received by a library since 1810, here the great collections is made. So the next slide. So in 2012, the Department of the Library took part in the project Electronic Memory of Arctic. The aim was to preserve the cultural heritage circumpolar world, which was collected in the library, archives, museums, and to provide the access to digital contact with using modern informational technology. So due to relationship and collaboration with those libraries, National Library works as well. So the very important way of this relationship is making the project with other countries, with the national libraries. The Republic of Sakha, Yakutia, is the biggest Arctic region of the planet, keeping its unique ecosystem of North and alive traditional indigenous people. Russia is a multinational country, and so Arctic people are also quite interesting to study and develop. So this is the international journal you see on the slide, Culture and Art of Arctic. So this is the conference of the word was born from snow, which was organized in 2020, and so there were presented quite available publishing, which were about languages and cultural culture indigenous people of North. So the most interesting things were grammar books, alphabet books in Ivansky language, Ket language, Sami language, and other languages. So also there were the conference, which is Fairy Tales of the North, which was quite attracted for students of schools of our Moskovsky region in St. Petersburg. Yeah, so you can see it on the slide, Fairy Tales.
Были представлены на выставке, да, следующий слайд, пожалуйста. И еще.
Okay, so in February exhibition was held, which was called Dictionary is Not Boring. So there were more than 120 publishing in different indigenous languages. So the exhibition contributed to study environment of languages, of native languages, and also motivate people to preserve the language and not to be indifferent to the culture and tradition of the ancestors. So, according to methodological work, librarians conduct the seminars, round tables, and also science practical conferences where different questions are considered according keeping, publishing of ethnic groups. And so also the issues about perspectives are considered. So it's going to be the conference soon.
Российской Федерации и переводов на эти языки. С информационным письмом можно ознакомиться на сайте библиотеки.
So it's going to be the conference. Sorry.
годы. Тогда же появились первые учебники. Появились первые переводы русской классической.
Okay, so the first translation also will be considered in this conference that's going to be soon. So I will let you know a little bit later about the date.
Языках коренных малочисленных народов. Положение изменилось только в 90-е годы. Государственные библиотеки регионов России проводят большую работу по
So the libraries of our country is doing a great work according the different aspects of the library needs. And so also the libraries which are quite far from situated quite far, so also try to communicate with the National Library and fill the gaps with the collection that the National Library has. So you can find actually all the publishing in our library. So the library getting the mandatory copy legal deposit from the 1810, oh, sorry, it's from the 1998. So as a conclusion, we plan to digitalize lots of materials that we have in our collection, just for everyone to be able to know the information about the indigenous people. But of course, we can understand that without government support, it's just not possible. So, and we think that all people, even they are not very big or small, so it needs the financial support and have a right to have it. So thank you very much for listening. So it's very important to learn the indigenous languages for the people of the tribes and ethnic groups. And it's very important to keep the knowledge in the future. Okay, so now the next reporter. So the next reporter is, Manette Longo, Professor, Department of Informational Science, University of South Africa. Manette, can you hear me? So Manette, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so are you ready to start?
I'm ready, I'm ready.
So that's amazing. Okay, we're listening to you.
Okay. Let me just get sorted out. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to be here to be presenting my short presentation to you on, I've titled my presentation, Creating a Nexus Between Libraries and Indigenous Peoples in South Africa, Challenges and Opportunities. Basically, I've looked at the literature and I'm sharing my thoughts based on my research on this field. So I'll just read my presentation and I'm hoping that everybody will be able to hear me. As an introduction, I would like to point out that following the democratic dispensation of South Africa, in 1994, South Africa embraced the right to access to information for all in line with international declarations and frameworks. One such framework is the Public Library Manifesto in all its iterations. The Public Library Manifesto of 2022 articulates as one of the missions of the libraries the preservation of and access to local and indigenous data, knowledge, and heritage, including oral tradition, providing an environment in which the local community can take active role in identifying materials to be captured, preserved, and shared, excuse me, in accordance with the community's wishes. Now, in accordance with this mission, it is important for public libraries to review their services and activities to determine the extent to which they align with the mission. And informed by a cursory review of existing literature, this presentation critically examines the extent to which and the strides made by public libraries in South Africa to align with this mission. I'll start with providing a brief context and highlight some of the issues that pertain to Indigenous peoples, their knowledges and libraries in South Africa. I will then look at the role of the library in facilitating access to and preservation of Indigenous peoples' knowledge. And lastly, I will make a few suggestions for how we can create this nexus between Indigenous peoples and libraries. In terms of the context, historically, South Africa is a country that was polarized due to colonization and subsequent apartheid laws. Indigenous communities were shunned and treated like second-class citizens in their country. They suffered several injustices, including denial of access to information. However, the dawn of the democratic dispensation ushered in a constitution that recognized the rights of all citizens. The dignity of Indigenous peoples of South Africa was finally restored when the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa came into being. Through the Bill of Rights, the Constitution entrenched the rights of all citizens to, among others, access to information, the right to use languages and participate in cultural activities of their choice. In the context of this presentation, Indigenous peoples and Indigenous communities are used interchangeably to denote South Africans who were historically marginalized based on their race. These communities are linguistically and culturally heterogeneous. They mainly reside in rural areas and constitute the majority of the population of South Africa. By marginalizing these communities, therefore, their knowledge systems also suffered the same fate. I, as the author of this paper, belong to this category of South Africans. When you look at Indigenous peoples, their cultural heritage and libraries, I'm going to highlight some of the issues that that are related to this. The Department of Arts and Culture in South Africa has been supporting the right to access to information and libraries through the public, through the public and community libraries conditional grant since 2007. The grant was intended to support transformation and equitable access to library and information services for all. Some of the activities around this initiative included building libraries and refurbishing existing ones, especially among communities that were previously marginalized. However, contrary to what one would expect following attempts to enhance easy access to libraries, user patterns have not changed much. School learners constitute most public library users. This could be due to the paucity of functional school libraries in many parts of the country, especially in areas that are inhabited by Indigenous communities. The low usage of libraries by Indigenous communities is a point of concern, given the efforts that have been made to facilitate access to information, especially with them in mind. Factors such as high illiteracy rates and a poor reading culture surfaced as some of the contributory factors to this situation. While learners are an important category of users, it is critical to be cognizant of adults who are equally entitled to library services. It is therefore imperative that libraries ensure equitable provision of materials to attract both young and old to the library, and indeed to conform to the right to access to information that is entrenched in the Constitution. Library collections are the backbone of any library. To this end, I have argued elsewhere that library collections need to reflect their users, whose involvement in collection building is crucial. Epistemological access to information seems to play a peripheral role when one looks at library collections currently. For example, despite the recognized low usage by adults and high levels of illiteracy, libraries still overemphasize the written text. Moreover, the fact that orality is one of the features of indigenous communities does not seem to inform collection development endeavors in public libraries. This apparent neglect of orality and indigenous knowledge goes against the IFLA UNESCO manifesto mission on access and preservation of local heritage, thus making impending danger of extinction of IK a reality. It becomes imperative that libraries embark on a continuous process of reviewing and evaluating their role to ensure sustained relevance and indeed effectiveness in meeting user needs. Now let's look at the role that the library can play in facilitating access and preserving indigenous people's cultural heritage. There's the literature knows a paucity of literature relating to indigenous peoples. This seems to be an international phenomenon. Several scholars have pointed that out. Referring especially to Maori literature, Professor Spencer Lilly, whom I believe is one of the speakers, observes that the rate of incorporating Maori literature does not seem to have grown that much, although there are signs of increase in the use of signage, in the use of Maori language. Factors such as funding, staff profiles, and are among possible contributors. I think the same can be said for South Africa. In Nigeria, Ebura and Mabawongu, noting the poor documentation efforts among alternative healthcare practitioners, saw the need for librarians to get involved in documentation and preservation training of indigenous health practitioners to ensure continued accessibility and preservation. Additionally, a colleague in Kampala noted the paucity of literature on the role of community libraries. Basically, colleagues, what I'm doing here is to point out that there isn't, in public libraries, public and community libraries, there's a dearth of literature on indigenous, for that pertains to indigenous communities. However, all is not lost because Tenubura noticed the willingness amongst librarians to participate in preservation efforts by partnering with local cultural centers, by recording stories by elders, and involving youth and women in program activities where the former can learn by doing and finally use ICTs to reach out to communities that do not have access. In South Africa, the National Library of South Africa has spearheaded several projects towards preserving indigenous people's cultural heritage. For example, one of their projects is in the Center for the Book, where they promote a reading culture, writing and publishing in indigenous languages. This initiative demonstrates the recognition of the role of languages in preserving heritage. Another noteworthy initiative is the biennial National Summit by the National Library, the Department of Sport Arts and Culture and the UNISA's Department of Information Science. They have several themes, and theme 5 of the project is on multilingualism and multiculturalism. And that one focuses on promotion of multilingualism in reading, development of indigenous language systems, and the preserving indigenous knowledge. In another library at in Durban of South Africa, there's a program called Ulwazi, which is an initiative of the eThekwini municipality, where the library cooperates, co-creates cultural and historical information with local communities. The content is local and is written in isiZulu, which is the language of the region, as well as English. Apart from documenting and presenting local content, this participative program ensures recognition and respect for local information and knowledge. As indicated in the context, South African indigenous peoples are linguistically diverse and are in all the country's 9 provinces. In a demonstration of respect for this diversity, signage in community libraries is in English and an indigenous language that is prevalent in a particular province. Moreover, at community level, staff are generally conversant with the major indigenous languages of their locality. The few examples that I've highlighted here show efforts by libraries in preserving knowledges of indigenous peoples. In an earlier study, I voiced concern on the stance of some heads of provincial library services regarding their role in facilitating access to indigenous knowledge. They continually alluded to the fact that museums are better equipped to document and preserve indigenous knowledge. I'm of the view that while the library's primary role is to provide access to information, there is also a need to reevaluate this role and determine whether, given the mission of preservation of cultural heritage, libraries can also shift their paradigm, which by virtue of training is informed by Western epistemology. I've highlighted a couple of opportunities that can be used to create a nexus between libraries and indigenous communities. Also, I've suggested the involvement of communities in harnessing and preserving indigenous knowledge. Indigenous communities are not empty vessels waiting to be filled up with knowledge from libraries. They possess a wealth of knowledge that have sustained them over generations. Evidence of this abounds, in the literature. It is important that librarians recognize the important role that indigenous knowledge can play in content creation and, by extension, transforming libraries to inclusive hubs. Librarians need to shift their paradigm in terms of what they regard as credible information. The problem, though, goes beyond practice, but starts with a kind of education and training for public librarians. Library and information science schools in South Africa need to incorporate indigenous librarianship in their curricula to equip community librarians to better serve indigenous communities. I must point out that currently the indigenous librarianship is not offered in any of our LI schools. Understanding and appreciation of indigenous epistemologies will go a long way in enhancing epistemic justice and bridging the gap between Western and indigenous librarianship. In conclusion, I believe that libraries do have a critical role to play in preserving cultural heritage of indigenous communities. Their proximity to communities is advantageous because it is easy to form rapport with community knowledge holders. It is indeed imperative that a different strategy to content creation be embraced to address the possible extinction of indigenous knowledge systems. I've pointed out as limitations that the literature review is not exhaustive, and I've relied a lot on my experience, research experience in the area more than I did on the literature. And with those words, colleagues, thank you very much for listening.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Благодарим вас за интересный и подробный рассказ.
So thank you very much for the very interesting report. And we would like to note that professionalism of librarians is very important. And it's quite important to prepare people who work in the libraries. So the next is National Library of Vietnam.
Представит доклад публичной библиотеки Вьетнама на пути к сохранению знаний. И я также хотела бы отметить, что сегодня...
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so just a second, please. So I would like to note that our conference is listened by the director of the Russian National Library. So sorry for interrupting, so you can start. One second, please. Okay. Have you got a presentation? Vietnam, have you got a presentation?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
So you're ready. Is there a presentation from you?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Sharing. Yeah.
So yeah, because we would like to check if everything works well. Okay. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
So ready to start? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Trần Thị Phương Lan. I'm talking with all of you from National Libraries of Vietnam. Today, I'm very happy to be here and to share some information about library activity for indigenous children in Vietnam. Before I talk about the main content, I would like to introduce some minutes about the National Libraries of Vietnam. Like you saw, here's the picture of the National Libraries of Vietnam. The National Libraries of Vietnam located in Hanoi capital. It is the north of Vietnam. So it's founded in the 29 November 1917 by the Governor General of Indonesia. It's open to the public on the 3rd September 1919. And now it belongs to Vietnam Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism.
К сожалению, не листаются кадры презентации.
Yeah.
Первый кадр заставки.
Excuse me, so we cannot see the slides of the presentation. We can see only the first slide, which is Vietnam's public libraries, and other slides are not clicked.
I'm sorry, so I stop the sharing and say it again. Chốt xe. Share screen đi. Đây.
Hello. Hello.
Excuse me, can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can see the screen. So try to click the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. So try to click it. Okay, so yeah, it works. Mm-hmm.
Now I come back to the main subject today. Dear colleagues, currently in Vietnam, many localities are importing modern culture, so indigenous culture is losing. So especially among young people, because modern culture has had a great influence on them. Therefore, maintaining and preserving indigenous culture is essential towards focusing on the younger generation. In Vietnam, we're trying to recover the indigenous knowledge in many ways. And today, I would like to talk about Vietnam Library with indigenous children. As you know, for every nation, the children are always considered the owner of their countries in the future. In Vietnam, it's also element making personalities of children is to create a healthy cultural living environment, give children position habits in daily activity, and make them understand traditional culture in parallel with acquiring advanced knowledge of humankind. Together with family and school, library play an essential role in providing and transmitting knowledge, supporting the formation of personality, lifestyle, and action of each person. In Vietnam, we always think that the children of today are the one tomorrow. That means the children has always attracted the biggest attention of the state and society of Vietnam. And the children have right to be cared, to play, and to be educated. To do this, the Vietnamese government in increasing interested in the field of library. Library have been built newer, more modern to serve reader. Resources are also being supplemented with more and more content to serve our own needs. And now I want to show some picture to introduce some picture related to the role of the library in serving indigenous children. Here's some picture about the children reading room at the public library from the north to the south of Vietnam. Included the mountain, the Iceland sea, and ethnic minorities. And the children come to a library to select things and reading book, and they can find information you want. Now the library in Vietnam always to try our best to do this. we want to bring more information to children by activity in library. And the children come to library not only read book, they also participate in many activities organized by the library to increase excitement, such as book reading festival, painting contest, and book show, or they even though they can take part in the conference about the concern the library to reader, and they even comment to the library, and they want to they can take part in the planting tree for product in the in environment outside the library, but for the librarian guide. And the libraries in Vietnam, we always want to the children abroad to the information technology, and the children come to libraries, they can use the computer in the library, and they can discover anything they want. Besides reading book, they can watch TV or learn and playing with book with librarian. Otherwise, a public library also allow children to borrow book for reading at home, which is also designed to them and their family member into the habit of reading, to increase the interest in reading in children. The library usually concerns them about their favorite book for new book to meet their need. And as the children in Vietnam have a summer holiday, they don't have to go to school for 3 months. So that's why the libraries in the summer have too many activities. For example, we got organize some introduction book contest, decorating in book, role play with book, and they can take part in the English class in the library. The public library in Vietnam want to preserve the heritage, the cultural heritage. So we also to establish a traditional cultural club for children. From this club, the children not only accumulate knowledge of folklore for themselves, but also contribute to preserving and promoting Vietnam's intangible cultural value. Here's some picture show about the traditional cultural club. Since many years, programmer and project on involving social force in public library activity have been replicated widely. Public library have efficiently conducted and diversifies the rotation of reading material to every season and area. This activity is called mobile library service, and this activity is now very popular in Vietnam, and it has expected. Under the plan, the public library staff bring new material to reflect to the old one, so that the children in difficult area and people can update information from this plan. And mobile library in Vietnam many form such as book box, book bag, book case, and so on. You can see the picture on the screen. Many provincial public libraries have also organized services for children from remote area, difficult area, and high mountain region. We want to help the children develop the reading culture and access to the indigenous material, help them to have a knowledge and understand of the land where they was born through the book. And here is some form servicing children from mobile libraries vehicle in Vietnam, in a lot of province in Vietnam. And the librarian in Vietnam also to bring book to the ethnic minorities for children, and we also to bring book to the ethnic school for people study there. We always want to the reader, the children here, to improve, understand about the indigenous culture in their life. As a mobile library vehicle equipped with modern equipment, the computer, internet connection, the film projector, and in the mobile library vehicle have a lot of material, many kinds of book, and have electric document and paper document in traditional, and a number of public library also address for the children patient. This arm to make the patient feel more better when they stay in the hospital. And we also do so for disability for to children have some difficult to read book. So we have some special book for the children disability. For the place where there are not any library, we build a container library to serve a book for the children and for the community here. We also want the people here to upload the book and the information they want, and to improve the knowledge about the every field. In spite of many efforts serving children in the public library in Vietnam, faced with a lot of challenges. The investment in basic construction for children reading room have been paid attention to, but the equipment and layout for the library are not suitable and unattractive to the children. And the situations of reading and using library of children is decreasing gradually because they lack free time, and the students have spent a lot of time to study at school and at home, and watching TV or using internet so much. The parent and student have no interest in encourage children to read more books to accumulate knowledge. Moreover, lacks a book about the locality and regional area can be suitable and attractive of children. There are not many activities to attract the children to read, as the lack of professional server for children in library. There's a challenge for serving children in its library in Vietnam. From that, we think we have to orientation. The first, we think the libraries in Vietnam have to maintain and gradually modernize library system and bookcase for children, organize more activity for children in the mountain, remote, ethnic minority area. The second, we had to establish the independent children library in some province or in the local. The library will be to center of reading and studying for children in area. And the third, we had to gradually modernize the children reading room as provincial library, increasing investment equipment suitable with the particularity, physiological and age group, creating a good cultural space and environment. As a fourth, the socialization and library activity, as well as receiving funds from the individual and organization. From the challenge, we consider some solution. As the first, strengthen the state management and socialization for children's service activity, increasing investment in own, for example, funding, material, library equipment, and so on. In addition, the state needs to have a proper investment policy for writing and for publishing children's books. And continue to innovate the way of the serving children in public library, promote the coordination with Asian social organization to organize activity to read books for children, strengthen and focus on training librarians. Librarians must have to specialize training, professional qualification for foreign language, proficiency in information technology. especially it's necessary to understand the physiological and need to the children. Now it's my presentation for come to an end. I hope to bring on all of you effective information about library activity for indigenous children in Vietnam. Thank you so much, and thank you for your attention.
Большое спасибо. Благодарим вас за такой подробный рассказ об опыте работы именно с детской аудиторией.
Thank you so much.
Одну минутку, у нас одна
Oh,
техническая.
sorry. Thank you very much for your work with children. It's very important, and we are glad to listen to about your experience with children. Not each national library work with children, and it's very important to attract children to read books, and it's very important for us to listen to you today, and we can take your experience as well.
Заведующая краеведческим отделом Наглицкой централизованной библиотечной системы Сахалинской области, Россия.
So the next reporter is
Следующим докладом. Сохранение культурного наследия коренных Сахалинской области из опыта работы.
Rassilnikova Inga Valerievna, the head of the Department of Nagilsky Centralized Library System. So the topic is preservation of the cultural heritage of indigenous people in Sakhalin Oblast, Sakhalin region, from the work experience of Nagilsky Centralized Library System. The problem of preserving the culture and languages of the indigenous peoples of the north is no less actual in the Sakhalin Oblast than in the rest of the world. The Nagilsky district is a place of compact residence of two ethnic groups of small indigenous minorities of the north, the Nivki and the Ulta. There are about 4,500 representatives of the Nivki people in the world and 350 representatives of the Ulta people. At present, only representatives of the oldest generation speak the languages. The Nif language is unique. To date, the question of the genetic affiliation of the language has not been fully resolved by scientists. Modern Nifs and Ulta want to know their culture and language, but a big problem is the very small amount of contact in the native language. Everything is missing: textbooks, books, videos, and etc. The aim of the Nagilsky libraries specialist is to fill the gap and give the indigenous peoples of the Nagilsky district what they need. The library's activities in this direction are very diverse, involving well-known wood carving masters, brothers Vadim and Yuri Levkunov. We have organized master classes in Nivsk, wood carving and tambourine making, which are well attended. With the help of Veronika Osipova, a well-known Ulta craftswoman, we organized a series of master classes on making fish skin panels in the Ulta technique. So, the peculiarity of these lessons is that we do not just teach those who wish to learn national arts, but do it on the basis of folklore materials. That is, before the lessons, we familiarize children with the legend of the people, show ornaments used by their ancestors, and the children illustrate the future book. At the presentation of the project, all children are given a new book with the legend in the Russian and national languages illustrated with the children's works. Thus, the project achieves 4 goals at once: to teach national craftsmanship, to familiarize with the legends, ornaments, and languages. Another task of the librarians was to collect invaluable folklore materials, publish them, and preserve them both for the indigenous people themselves and for the world community. Since scientists from different countries and tourists are interested in the culture of the Nevsky and Oryx, to the teachers of the Gymnasium of Nogilsk, together with the students, translate folklore text into English. This solves several problems at once. First, the children get acquainted with the culture of the peoples of our region. Secondly, they learn English in an informal way. And thirdly, the original folklore text becomes available to the world English-speaking community. We publish not only folklore materials, but also other works by writers from among the peoples of the North. For example, books for children by Elena Bibikova, poems by Angelina Mavshik, and work by internationally renowned writer Vladimir Sanko. All our books are published not only in Russian, but also in native Nevs and Ulta languages, given their vulnerability. But publishing books in the languages of the peoples of the North alone cannot preserve the language in full, since the number of speakers of Nevsk and Ulta languages is catastrophically small. So we publish literature for both children and adults. We publish folklore and others works, phrase books and dictionaries. We also collect Nevs and Ulta ornaments. In 2019, thanks to the Melody of Nevs Words project, an electronic Nev audio dictionary with Russian and English translations of words was created. The application, easy to use, is installed on the phone, is always at hand, and is actively used by Nevs. It is valuable that Nevs words were voiced by the language. Expect author of Nevs alphabet and prime, the first Nevs writer Vladimir Mikhailovsky Sangi. We have a long standing friendship with Vladimir Mikhailovsky. Thanks to this cooperation, such books were born in Russian and Nevsk languages as 8 books of the series Read with my grandmother and others. But this is not all our work. In 2021, the first cartoon in the Nevsk language, The Fairy Tale Shaman, was released. And in 2022, the second, The Bat and the Toad. The cartoons are based on Nevsk folklore, and the roles are voiced by the natives of the Nogilsky district, who have provided to be very talented and perfectly fulfill those roles. To date, Nogilsky Model Library, named after Sangi, has published 33 books in the languages of the indigenous minorities of the north of Sakhalin. Sangi has published 33 books in the languages of Sakhalin's indigenous minorities, created 11 audiobooks and 2 cartoons. This work has been recognized with high awards. The best publication prepared by Library, 2019, the All-Russian FADN Award, K-Word is called, K-Word Moscow 2019, and other rewards. Funding is provided through grant projects. Over the years, more than 60 grants have been worked on, and more than 20 million rubles of extra budgetary funds have been raised, including for the preservation of Aboriginal culture. To increase the ability of context for the next people and all those interested in this topic, books, audiobooks, and cartoons are posted on the website of the Nigerian centralized library system, and printed editions are provided free of charge to all libraries to the Sakhalin Oblast.
И электронную версию словаря для мобильных телефонов на 4500 слов. Если вы позволите, я на 1 минуту включу низкий мультфильм, чтобы вы могли услышать, как звучит совершенно уникальный.
So if you let me, I would like you to show the NIFS cartoon, just a couple of minutes.
Поделиться видео, нужно еще поделиться звуком. Галочка должна там быть у вас.
Не слышно, да?
Анна, скажи.
Мы включали мультфильм, было слышно или нет?
Нет,
Нет,
не
мы
было.
не видели, не слышали.
So the presenter is trying to switch on cartoon for us to watch. Just a couple of seconds.
Вот демонстрация экрана.
Okay, so it works.
Слышно?
Да, слышно, спасибо.
Жири хара, мири хара. Ирнев кчать муспиух жири хара, мири хара фитумдун. Жири мух кора, ышк пидмун гангра. Мири мух пидмун гангра, ышк абы кора. Ншак парф мири тафтух пшит. Пимагук улавшивш ит. Не ургут фитумдра. Жири пидмун ган енш винет. Мири итгут янг мыт.
Та, помогу я, Мири. Нира урвут фит хумдра.
Жири толкаш чаштохшивш, хукрух полаш коют.
Иди, не вук-вук, ну сик-сик иди.
Хуркиух чонигун, тапиун ни рож андеп магумагут.
Чё не гуд, топи гуд, поинта.
Хурки куз шпуиш, чонигун шут. Вар парагуш пуит. Мири хупш, жирин шит. Жири тёрух кшош магумагут.
Ну, вот такая работа проводится нашей библиотекой по сохранению культуры и языка коренных малочисленных народов Севера.
So this movie, this cartoon is presented the traditional points. So thank you very much for your performance and for cartoon. It was very interesting to watch.
Старший помощник библиотекаря Индийского технологического института Дели Махит Гарг. Пожалуйста.
Okay, Mahit Kark, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yeah, I hope I am audible.
So yes, we can hear you.
I'll just share the screen. So, Ram Ram, Namaste, Jai Johar, and very good afternoon to all of you. First three phrase, actually the indigenous words from India we used to do for wishing our colleagues. So very good afternoon to everyone present here. It's really a privilege to be part of this online seminar on the theme of libraries and indigenous people. I have been associated with the indigenous community for the previous 5 years, from 2016 to 21, when I was working in one of the indigenous university in India. And also I have been associated with the IFLA Indigenous Matters section as a standing committee member for last almost 6 years. So before starting my actually presentation, I would like to thank especially Elena for continuous support, and she was the one who was regularly sending me the mail, and she was communicated all the time, and I was these 2 months were actually for little hectic for us because of new students, incoming students are joining our institution. So yeah, so as you know, the Professor Muhammad has said that librarians have a great role in preserving the indigenous knowledge and how they can do it. So what exactly I will be discussing in this almost 10 minutes presentation, or maybe a little shorter, that how to preserve those things, how to preserve indigenous knowledge using a software called Omega, which is one of the open source software where you can manage your collection. I'll just discuss some of the basic part, and we all know those things. And I'll just show you the one of the demo site we have created on our cloud on the machines. So, and what are the different features of that cloud? Okay. So just I'll do slideshow of that. It's we all are the part of this ecosystem, and this is the only planet in this universe where the existence of life, where is the life exists. Okay, and we do in this is a human chain. When we used to do that, and there are on this earth there are different kinds of groups of peoples are living with their different cultures, and with their different unique characteristic cultures, languages, historic lives on earth. And this is the one of the group, indigenous people is the group which are the inheritors and practitioners of unique culture and ways of relating to people and environment. So this is one of the collage of indigenous peoples of India. And in India, those indigenous peoples are known as tribes. We call as tribes. So unity in diversity is one of the most spectacular features of the population of India. India has the second largest tribal population in the world. As per our previous census held in 2011, the tribal population constitute about 8-9% of total population in India. When I'm saying tribal, that means it's an indigenous population in India. The tribal people throughout the country have very rich tradition and cultures and heritage with their unique lifestyles and customs. That's why, and because exactly, if this is the map of geographical map of different percentage of indigenous community exist in India, you see in almost all the states we have a tribal population, except the 3 states where we have no representation of indigenous community. But you see in northern part, and there are if you see the bottom part, and if you see the whole, that indigenous community is full of located in whole of India. In some population, some of the areas are more than 40% are there, and so that's exactly so the diversity of different indigenous communities are presently in India. And there are different kinds of tribes. Around 705 tribes are available. So we all know that the relationship between the tribals, means indigenous peoples, and the nature is a strong forms of life of tribal move around nature, because they used to live around the natural resources, and they used to live in the hilly areas or remote areas. So, and they are very close to the land and the forest. Okay, and therefore it is a important to document and disseminate those indigenous knowledge and philosophy and culture, so that our next generation also know that these are the things, these are the practices are going on different kind of things, because they have their different medicinal structure, they have different administration structure, they have different their cultural value, they have like for if we go to the community to community in the different indigenous community, we have like different marriage culture, different if birth happens, though they have different culture. So these kind of things are required to so that our next generation used to know that these are the things are available with these are the practices were our earlier generation used to do. So in summary, I'll just say that preserving cultural heritage is a crucial because it safeguards our collective past, celebrate diversity, promotes understanding and tolerance, supports economic growth, and enrich present and future cultural experience. And in this digital world, and thanks to this digital world, that's why we all are situated in different we are able to available in this seminar. So like that, the digital space is the best platform where we can disseminate we can do documentation of indigenous knowledge in very efficiently way, and so that we can ensure the maximum visibility, so that like the different kinds of indigenous peoples living in India or living in different parts of country, they can show that okay, these kind of practices are happening in these kind of practice are happening in India, this kind of practices happening in Brazil, this kind of practices are happening are continuing in Russia. So that's the power of digital space, so that they also know that okay, if there are any similarities. Social researcher, it will help social researcher that how is there any patterns are there, how exactly this kind of, is there a similarity of cultures are there between the indigenous communities. So to do that, we library science library and information science professionals, and two of the softwares are very much popular among us. One is DSpace we used to do for our institutional repository, where we used to do our text content, because DSpace has the kind of thing, it's meant for mainly this text content. Also you can do your data set and other formats also, but that's not a good practice. Means generally most of the people used to upload text PDF content on DSpace. And now, of course, the DSpace has launched their latest version 7, which also supports UI for that. But still, it's not for me as a archive and for museum kind of thing. I don't like that DSpace support that kind of features which required for preserving the indigenous indigenous culture. Then ePrint is another by many of the libraries for preserving for documentation content. And there is that Archive-matic is another software which is this is our software which I used to I am working on this Omeka, and it's bring those website and a single platform, so that for all the tribes you can get a resourceful information at single place. Okay, so you don't have to search each one of the community on different platforms, and this is the platform you can get that. Then events, if there are different events happen like seminar, conferences, or any of the things happen from related to indigenous things, then emails, of course, is very important these days. Hyperlink, you can also hyperlink and you can store that content. Then there are data set these days a lot of data has been generated, and we have been moving in been in this open data environment where we are promoting that data should be open, so that everyone can do the research and they can extract the knowledge what we can't do or some other group can't do, because every research has some limitation. So you can store your data in that, and also like if any software you have developed or any of the program code you have to do, so you can do that. Just I'll show you the lookup of this. So it look like this. This is the interface. Okay, so we haven't developed content related to the, because it's a part of a project, but we will be taking further ahead for funding kind of thing, and then we will be developing that. So there are two options are there, and items. So these are the items we have added. So there are 3 items are there, and then these are the collections. So these are the basically the collection we have added, and under each like this workshop collection has 2 items on these 2 workshop we have conducted, and then this is the newsletter. So just to show that, okay, this is the very empty side. Okay, so again, the best thing, the one more best thing about this Omeka is that, you know, we are like we are from libraries and profession. I don't have to discuss about metadata standards. Okay, so metadata standards are very important for us to identify any of the resources on the online. Okay, and we used like Dublin Core metadata standard, 15 elements. We are so fascinated about that the every librarian, there is a saying that librarian, if a librarian has to select any software, he will see the feature of either mark, machine readable catalog, or Dublin Core, because they have to structure their metadata, they have to structure the content. So apart from that, this tagging is the important part, you know. Like we used to, whenever we do any tweet or whenever we do post on any of the content on social media, we just give the hashtag. So in the digital environment, hashtag are the important thing to classify, to organize your content. Okay, so for this, like say for example, this is the we have given the 6 hashtag. Okay, so whatever the like somebody is want to know about the indigenous, there if there is any workshop or conference are going on, because in metadata standard there are 15 elements are there, and those are very strict. Okay, though we have like modified Dublin Core, but software support those of 15 elements. But apart from that, what we can do is that we can give that this hashtag as a workshop, and whatever the content is available related to workshop is happening or happened, it can be accessed from the single this platform. Okay, so that is one of the way to structure your content, to show your content availability of the content of this platform. And this is the dashboards, and they have different plugins. There are free plugins and themes are there. You can do any of the themes, and the structure is same, and you can change the color, you can change the background color, you can put your logo. So these things are possible like any of the open source software. Okay, so this is all about this is the software which we have explored, and in future like we will be working on this platform to build this indigenous the collection related to indigenous people on this platform. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity to discuss my little work on this platform. I hope I know that this is like the language is one of the limitation, but I'm able to deliver the things. And if you have any questions or if you want to collaborate, I am okay to collaborate. And it will be great if we can do any of the work, and if we can develop any production in collaboration. Thank you all.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Дополнительно хотела бы отметить, что Российская национальная библиотека
I'd like to note that our library is going to take part in the festival, which is going to be in August. Thank you very much for meeting us today, for your experience and for your report. Thank you.
Наира Сильвьера, профессор факультета библиотечного дела Федерального университета штата Рио-де-Жанейро. Сообщение называется «Каталогизация произведений коренных».
Next, our participant is Naira Silveira, national. Yeah, you can speak.
Hi, in Brazil is morning, then good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here discussing such a relevant topic, which is the relationship between librarians and the indigenous people. I would like to express my gratitude to the whole team at the National Library of Russia and congratulations her on organizing this event. In particular, to Aliona Shrova for her attention with me. Thank you. My name is Naira Cristofoletti Silveira, and I will provide a self-description to make this meeting more inclusive and accessible to individuals with visual impairments. I am a white woman for 40 years old today, but tomorrow I will be 41 because it's my birthday. I am blonde, shoulder-length strange hair, and I wear glasses. I am wearing an orange shirt, and there is a white wall behind me. I am a professor at the Federal University of State of Rio de Janeiro, located in the city of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Since 2009, I have been teaching, researching, and working in cataloging. Cataloging, or bibliographic representation, in a simple terms, aims to bring together similar documents and individualize them based on their particularities. Although there are pre-established standards for creation bibliographic records, this normative structure reflects West culture. In other words, cataloging codes are developed by the dominant culture, which is not the culture of minorities. Thereafter, thinking about the relationship between libraries and indigenous peoples is important, and it goes beyond cataloging a book. The knowledge of indigenous peoples has its own characters. When a cataloger encounters documents, they do not understand sometimes. There is a significant change in representation and creating access points to the documents. In the case of indigenous documents, Aline da Silva Franca's research shows that indigenous literature is inadequately represented. Sorry, my English is not good, but I will try. The obstacles to faithful representation, the documents begin with the lack of knowledge about indigenous literature, followed by the limitation of the catalog's codes, culminate in a kind of structural prejudice against indigenous people. This leads us to the question, how can we represent ensure the preservation of the memory of indigenous people if they are not recognized as people deserve preservation? If indigenous people are currently facing struggles to guarantee their existence, how can we ensure the preservation of their knowledge in librarians? As I mentioned earlier, I am a professor, and as an education, I cannot ignore my responsibility ensure citizens and librarian. In this context, we create a book club in 2007 focused in indigenous literature, involving 2 undergraduate library science students, Maria Helena Martins Pinto de Oliveira and Ana Lúcia de Miranda Martins, the librarian Aline da Silva Franca, and the librarian Rodrigo Piquet Saboia de Mello. The objective of the book club was to promote the dissemination of indigenous literature knowledge as a way to reduce prejudice against indigenous people and value Brazilian culture and identity. By involving library science students in this project, we not only aimed to learn about the value indigenous culture, but also aimed to train librarians who are more human and capable to preserve this culture. Brazilian indigenous people possess a rich knowledge that ranges from medicinal plants, using the pharmaceutical and to handcrafts. This indigenous knowledge is an integral part of Brazilian cultural identity. However, despite being an essential contributor to Brazilian cultural identity, the indigenous population faces significant prejudice, often stemming from ignorance. Thus, cataloguers from Western culture face difficulties in identifying that they have in their hands and up catalog in a simple or even negative manner. For example, in librarians, indigenous are sometimes not considered as author of their works, but as subjects, not the author, but the subjects. This compromise one of the fundamental functions of catalog, bringing together words by the same authors. This inadequacy in representation and the establishment of access points leads to the silence of indigenous voice. Once forget, they remember hiding. Library science has the role of giving voice to all peoples. Regarding this bibliographical principle, not only harms indigenous people, but also society as a whole, as it loses access to ancestral knowledge, which is crucial in today's world, especially for the preservation of environmental heritage and sustainability. This provides a concise overview of the substantial change we encourage as customs of collective memory. Recognize and acknowledge indigenous people is not only our responsibility as librarians, but also our duty as human beings. Thank you once again, Alione. I hope this event will these fruits results, and I early anticipate your future interaction. Thank you very much, and so sorry my English.
Уважаемая Наира, большое спасибо. Мы
Dear
поздравляем.
Naira, thank you very much. So we want to congratulate you. Happy birthday. Wish you all the best in your career and your work.
Спасибо. И следующий участник нашего семинара – директор Национальной библиотеки Шри-Ланки Падма Бандаранаяке.
The next participant is the director of the National Library of Sri Lanka.
Коренной народ Шри-Ланки.
So, director of the National Library of Sri Lanka, building collections of information sources on Vedas, Sri Lanka's indigenous people. Padma, hello, you can start.
Hello. Yes, let me share my presentation slides. First of all, I would like to thank Alina from the National Library of Russia for giving me this opportunity. Actually, she is the one following with me, asking the presentation, and so thank you so much for your encouragement. So this is about building collections of information sources on Vedas. They are the indigenous population people in Sri Lanka. So this is the outline of my presentation. So let me give the brief account on historical and geographical information about Vedas. So as you may have heard about them, but it's my duty to explain about them. So Vedas are the indigenous people in Sri Lanka, the first inhabitants of the country. Also, they are known as Adivasis, or in Sri Lanka, they are called Vaniyala Etto. That's for saying that they are inhabitants of forest or forest inhabitants. So, so they are the Aboriginal people or real inhabitant in Sri Lanka before the advent of the Aryans from India. So, according to the Mahavansa, the great chronicle of Ceylon or Sri Lanka, they are the descendants of
Я
Queen
прошу прощения, мы видим только первый
Queen
слайд
and King Vijaya. So they are originated from.
Padma, sorry for interrupting. So we can see only the first slide. So can you check it once again?
Okay.
So there is only the first slide.
Okay. Do
Yeah,
I need to share one by one?
Yeah, so we can see you sharing, but there is only the first slide here. So
Okay.
we cannot see how you click the slides.
Okay. So in my slide screen, I can see, it's moving.
Давайте еще раз заново.
Okay, so let's try to.
Now
okay, so probably it's works now.
Can you see the second one?
Yeah. Now it's okay.
Okay. Now the third one. Yeah, I'm talking about this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they are, according to the anthropologist, these Vedas are, originated from ancient times, dating back to the Stone Age. So many studies were done related to the Sri Lankan Veda community by researchers from various parts of the world. So the Vedas are, now believe that they are they are numerically very less, but they are going to extinct very soon, within few decades. So that's why we need to pay more attention on their existence. So I'm going to move to the next slide. If you can't see, can you see the slide now? Next slide. Can you see the next slide?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Okay, so is the third slide you're showing, right?
So
Padma,
yeah,
we are ready to listen to you.
So can you see the slides? The next slide, the map.
We can see slide number 3.
Нет, не слышу.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then.
Now we can see the map.
Yeah. So their their homelands are, traditional homelands are limited to several provinces, 3 provinces: Uva, eastern and the north central part of Sri Lanka. So basically these are the main areas where they are living in these 3 provinces. So now next slide I'm showing you, then hope you can see the slides. There are 3 types of Vedas. They are called cave dwellers, and then the others are coastal dwellers, and then the dwellers engage in chena cultivation in villages. So there are three types. So basically they were all previously lived in caves. So these are their ancestral homes. Now present day they are in the dwellings like this, made of mud, and then kajan stored on the, they are, the roof is like this, and then they are very, base with the minimum facilities they have in the rural, very far rural areas in the the mentioned three provinces. So formerly they were fully dependent on hunting. They were hunters and gatherers. Using bow and arrow they were hunting, and most of the Vedas now they become farmers nowadays, and they do slash and burn chena cultivation. But those who are living in the eastern part where the coastal area is, they are mostly fishermen. They do fishing to make their living. So they have different culture than other communities in the country. So they have different arts and crafts. They have different, traditional dances such as Kirikoraha dance. It's very famous. A lot of tourists arrive, see them to see their dances. This special dance Kirikoraha, invoking blessings from the demons, the yakas. So they have different music also, different musical instruments than other part of the country. And they have different ceremonies to get the blessings from demon or god. And some are mixed with Hindu cultures. Those who are living in the eastern part, they are mostly, majority of them are Tamil population. So they sometimes practice Hindu ceremonies as well. So they have ritual performances, and they are practicing indigenous medicine, Ayurveda treatments. So they have a lot of indigenous knowledge with them. Their clothing, you can see them, previously they were like this, their upper body part is naked, but nowadays they are like, the farmers in their surroundings. So their dressing pattern has been changed immensely now. So they have family life, so has nuclear families, infrequently as extended families. And so their marriage is they appreciate monogamy, and then they practice cross-cousin marriages. So dowry is not prominent practice between the Vedas. So their religion wise also they practice animism. It's, believing in non-human entities such as animals, objects and plants. So they have a different language called Veda language, but now as they have assimilated with other people in the Sinhala speaking people, and then in the eastern part they are mixing with the Tamil speaking people. They have a different, they have a dialect of, different dialects now. So then the libraries and collection on Vedas, now I'm going to focus on that, because all the collections are scattered among various kind of libraries, and so this aim of this report is to get information about such dispersed scattered collections. And as you know, indigenous knowledge is very much important. So ICH collection at the National Library is another important collection about Vedas, including Vedas. All ICH part of knowledge is available at the National Library. So if you search on the National Library's OPAC online public access catalog, you can find about them, and some collections are preserved well under air condition situation in the environment. And so that's one place we have, that's the National Library. And as well as the National Archives, Department of National Archives also has a separate collection for folk music conservation, for preserving their music. So that also very important. So it's supported by the Cultural Ministry. So then we have collections at the National Museum, its library, and as well as several regional museums. They have several exhibits and book collections related to Vedda culture and their lifestyle under the anthropology division. So you can see under number 5, they have displayed all objects used by Vedda community. Bow and arrow, some of their pots, what they use in their households, and so all kind of things are displayed in the main museum as well as the other regional museums, and some books related to their culture and all sort of things, research papers related to Vedas and the indigenous population people are kept in the museum library. So the collections are scattered even among the universities also, university libraries. So all university libraries have some collections. So I searched for some of them, and I found every library has some collection, fairly a good collection on the research findings and all kind of theses and articles, various kind of things on Vedda population. So then collections available at public libraries. So public libraries are the highest number of libraries in the country, scattered throughout the country. In every small communities, they have a public library. So they especially there are some libraries in the Vedda population living areas also. They have focused on their developing regional collections. So these are all some of their publications available at the public libraries in the country. So one good example is the Mahiyangana Public Library, which is located in Uva province. It has a special collection of items on Vedda community. It's the major Bintan, that's the one of the highest Vedda population area. So this library is in the vicinity of the Bindana. So it has a good collection of all kind of records and all research papers and things, and some findings and some translations of Europeans and some Western people have done a lot of research. So their translations also are available for other researchers to use. So then Vedda heritage villages also are there, supported by the cultural ministry. So in Ratugala, one of the areas which has a tourist attraction. So they have some souvenirs to buy. So indigenous medicine, they pack indigenous medicine in boxes in some cases like this, and they have some traditional ornamental things, earrings, necklaces they make for sale. So souvenirs are available in these places. So that's another place where we can see their heritages. So these are the books I came across for finding some books on Vedda population, indigenous people of Sri Lanka. The very important one is the Seligman, Brenda and Charles Seligman's book, published in 1911, based on an ethnographic study in Sri Lanka. It's a detailed account of Vedda people and their culture, lifestyle and social structure. So it is translated, this is its translation into Sinhala. So then again Charles Seligman translated another, presented another book on Vedas of Ceylon. So almost all of these are translated into local languages. So then another one is Vedas of Sri Lanka, an account of the demography, anthropology and social structure of the Vedas by Silva. So there are some more important books. I have just listed only the very important books published based on research. So then another one is by another researcher called Neera Wickramasinghe. So she has published a book called The Vedas, a Vanishing Tribe of Sri Lanka. Another one is the forest monk of Sri Lanka, monks of Sri Lanka, because it's not directly related to the Vedas, but it shows the interaction between forest dwelling communities, including Vedas and Buddhism in Sri Lanka. So Veda Villages of Anuradhapura by Channa Vikramasekara is another publication. So these are very, having a rich collection of information in these books. Whoever wants to do research about this Veda population, these are very good sources. So anyway, they all are scattered. Some are available with the National Library, but some are available in universities, some are available in National Museum. So likewise, it's a scattered collection. So the very important source to find such collections are the National Bibliography. It is a monthly publication compiled by the National Library of Sri Lanka. So it serves as a tool for finding resources using bibliographic details given in it. So here I found a book published in one of the bibliographies in 2017. It has this publication published in Sinhala. So when you come search for all publications bibliographies, so you can find them not only Veda, all under the decimal classification, all the information, all knowledge is divided into subjects based on the decimal classification in the bibliography. So another important source is the periodical article index. It is also a National Library publication, and it is a quarterly publication providing all journal and magazine articles published in Sri Lanka under various subject headings. So here I got one one article under social groups. So it has it directly written about the Vedas, vanished trails, and vanishing tribe, published in Travel Sri Lanka magazine in volume 2, number 2, published in December 2004. So this is another good tool to find information about Veda or indigenous community, indigenous people in the country. So some articles and reports also found on that. One very good one is the UNESCO one, Living Heritage and Indigenous Peoples. It has a very detailed description about other countries' indigenous peoples as well. So one is on the Vedas. So that these reports are also available in some of the libraries I mentioned before. So there are theses and chapters. This is a chapter about indigenous people in the research finding. So not only that, then several online resources are also available. A wide range of information sources in research databases, digital libraries, academic repositories so they are made available for accessing scholarly articles by researchers. So this is also, I found, very important. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, a good source for anyone who wants to study about the indigenous peoples in the world and to know their rights and what the United Nations wants to say about their rights. So then other type of information sources are the hoteliers, because they are having travel and tourism promotion sites. So they do promotion about Veda community, because some foreigners, they visit Sri Lanka for seeing them and to stay with them and to do anthropological studies with them, and to some want to dress like them. So you can see some of the foreigners here with the Veda community, and they enjoyed joining with them via their cultural dances. So this the Veda community actually contribute to the economy of the country as well. So because they attract a lot of tourists to the country. So here I am going to mention about the challenges they are facing, because we need to address such things if we want to preserve their culture and heritage. So from the beginning, the land fragmentation, relocation, and the scarcity of drinking water, as they are in the rural areas, very far rural areas, they are getting, poor educational facilities than other part of the country. So they have livelihood issues, poor health, and malnutrition also there. Then interaction with the wildlife and law, because they are hunting, but there is a law against hunting, so they have to face that law, and then maintain their way of life, the living pattern. So then, as you are aware, Sri Lanka was under the colony of several nations, Portuguese, then Dutch, then the British. When the British came on the scene, then the so-called wild Vedas, or those who lived mostly by hunting and gathering, were confined for the most part to the Palurata. That means it's called desolate lands. So then it's in the plains of so in the north central province of the country. So then it causes for marginalizing them once again. So then issues of modernization also, due to globalization, they are threatened to modernize, and then they could easily result in vanishing them as a important cultural group in the country, because of the younger generation adapting the new way of dresses, and so with the education they do not want to carry on their traditional way of living. So then another thing is assimilation of Vedas with mainstream of ethnic groups. They get married with the other communities, Sinhala and Tamil speaking people, and even with Muslims in their area. So then that also a problem. Then the leaders are struggling for the survival of their traditional lifestyle. So then, according to the research findings also, these were confirmed that by research findings that Vedas had some challenges, like due to the there was an internal civil war in Sri Lanka, particularly in the north and the eastern part of the country, but it affected the entire the whole the country, the island nation. So it affected to the this population as well, and the community as well. Then relocation or resettlement from their own native places due to several development projects. A massive irrigation project called Mahaveli Development Project also caused for displacement or getting new places instead of their native places. So then other finding was they are diminishing, like vanish their unique cultures when relocate from their native areas and to new places allocated by the government. So these were the research findings, some major research findings. There are plenty of research findings. So what I want to say is being the National Library. The National Library is the apex body of the country's library sector. So we need to take the lead to preserve their collections, preserve collections on them, as well as provide them for the researchers. And similarly, the other stakeholders, Cultural Ministry, Education Ministry, including the other government bodies, should take collaborative policy decisions to facilitate Veda's way of life as they want to practice in the traditional manner in order to preserve their way of life and provide facilities to their traditional homelands. And awareness among youth and general public also very important to convince them the importance of their existence, and then how much they have contributed to the country's rich history. And then the preservation of collections by librarians. So this seminar also focused on libraries and indigenous people. So we need to focus on preservation of collections for keeping these things for the next generation. So I think digitization is the very good conservation measure we can practice, and it provide easy access via digital platforms. Also, that all scattered information can be collected or get them digitized, and also from one location, if we can provide them as a repackage, or create a compendium to provide all sort of information from one platform, so that would be very useful. And further research also needed to preserve such get the findings, how to preserve them, and how enhancing access, and then how we can help the community to have their own way of life. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation, and thank you once again for your attention. So with that, I conclude my presentation.
Большое спасибо за ваш интересный,
Thank you very much for your interesting report. It's quite difficult and hard work. So the next is Associate Professor, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, Maturanga Maori, Preserving Maori Knowledge System in New Zealand.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to this short session on Mātauranga Māori and how it's being preserved in New Zealand libraries. Māori are the Indigenous peoples of New Zealand. We are closely related to other peoples from Polynesia, having migrated from Eastern Polynesia about 1,000 years ago. Current population of Māori is about 17.4% of our overall population of 5.2 million. Māori identity is determined by ancestry. There's no blood quantum requirement. You just have to demonstrate that you had a Māori ancestor to qualify as Māori. Māori social structure is focused around three main groups: the whānau, or the extended family unit; the hapu, the group of whānau who make up a sub-tribe; and iwi, which is a group of hapu who make up a tribe. Mātauranga Māori translates into English as Māori knowledge, but that is quite a simplistic explanation of what Mātauranga Māori actually involves. It's its own knowledge system, and it's a Māori way of seeing the world. Prior to colonisation in the 19th century, Māori were pre-literate, and the knowledge was transmitted orally, through carvings, through woven panels, through sung poetry, incantations, and place names, which helped identify geographical features of our country. Critical to understanding Māori knowledge is the Māori language, or Te Reo Māori. This is an official language of New Zealand and has been so since 1986. There are various aspects of Māori knowledge that cannot be understood in any other language other than Te Reo Māori. They lose the essence of that knowledge when translated into another language. Also important to Mātauranga Māori is what we call tikanga Māori, which is cultural customs, and that governs the values, the beliefs, the morals, the ethics of Māori and how they engage with each other and with the environment, which is a very important part of our knowledge system. Mātauranga Māori is represented in New Zealand libraries in a number of contexts. First, there's the typical collection of Māori resources, often shelved as a separate sequence in our libraries, and includes books, serials, and other materials, including audiovisual items. Our major research libraries also hold items other than books that feature knowledge as it's been recorded since colonisation. This is in the form of manuscripts written either in English or Te Reo Māori, archives of Māori organisations and prominent Māori individuals, diaries and letters that have been written recording the thoughts of our Māori ancestors, newspapers that were published in both English and Te Reo Māori, particularly from the 19th century, that provide an overview of Māori thought of that period. Pictorial materials, both drawings, prints, and photographs that represent Māori ways of life. And then we also have oral history recordings of both on audio and in film that are a very strong resource that allows particularly our young people today to connect with their ancestors of yesteryear. We don't have enough time to get into the range of issues that are impacting on how knowledge is preserved. But some of the critical issues that libraries in New Zealand are facing when it comes to engaging with Mātauranga Māori include these three. Firstly, the workforce. We put a lot of effort into workforce development. We are constantly looking for Māori specialists to come in and work with Māori materials and to engage with our Māori communities. Māori specialists have those language skills and knowledge of cultural customs that enable them to engage with both the physical and the digital, as well as the individual liaison with Māori clients. We also put a lot of work into developing our non-Māori professionals, helping them to develop their language skills in Te Reo Māori, knowledge of tikanga Māori, and knowledge of how to care for Māori materials. This is an ongoing piece of work because as you can appreciate, because Mātauranga Māori is a knowledge system in its own right, there is a lot to learn about that knowledge system. Digitization of our resources is another key issue. We've seen much more in the way of collaborative approaches between libraries, archives, and museums in recent years. And we're in a race against time to digitize particularly audiovisual materials that are present in redundant formats, so film and tape. So these need to be preserved before they no longer become usable. And by digitizing them, we can make them more accessible to those who wish to access them. We're also putting a lot more focus on digitizing the Māori archival and manuscript materials that are held in our research libraries, so that these can be more widely available through the internet for use either by other libraries or by our clients who are within their own organizations or households. This is a big job, and obviously that some of these materials are very fragile, so the preservation aspect of that is very important. We're also working with Hapu and Iwi who wish to develop their own repositories using both physical and digital items. There is increased interest in repatriation of those materials for those particular organizations that are wishing to put together their own knowledge storehouses. So those are just a few key issues that I wanted to bring to your attention. Obviously, 10 minutes is not very long to share the totality of Mātauranga Māori. But if you go to this website, you will find some of the publications that I've written on these issues, and hopefully they will give you a stronger understanding of the way that New Zealand libraries are engaging with Mātauranga Māori. So thank you for listening. I hope the rest of the seminar goes extremely well.
Уважаемые коллеги, друзья, это был последний доклад нашего сегодняшнего семинара. Большое спасибо вам за участие. Я надеюсь, что наша встреча прошла познавательно, интересно. И мы видим, какую разнообразную большую работу проводят во всем мире. Одну секунду, у нас техническая неполадка. Большое спасибо. Мы видим, какую действительно большую работу проводят библиотеки во всем мире. И это очень интересный для нас опыт. Я хотела бы поблагодарить за техническую и организационную поддержку нашего сегодняшнего мероприятия своих коллег Анну, Алену и Дарью. И, уважаемые коллеги, ждем вас среди участников, докладчиков наших следующих онлайн-мероприятиях, о которых мы говорили. Спасибо вам за участие и до новых встреч в Российской национальной библиотеке. Спасибо вам большое.
Thank you very much for your participants in this meeting. So we are very glad to see you among our reporters today in our conference. It was very interesting and something we can take as your experience, something we can take it and we can see what work people do around the world. Thank you very much again. And I would like to say thank you to Nina and Alona. So thank you again.
Спасибо, до новых встреч.
Thank you very much again. See you and we are waiting for you at our further meetings.
До свидания.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Здравствуйте.
Thank you and goodbye.